had talked about, the rise of populism, and you talked about, populism on both sides, but there's some overlap there. So I'm curious what that overlap is. I kind of see, like, a lot of times it seems like, as you said, there's two sides, right? There's always two sides. And it almost seems like they're seeing the exact same problem, and maybe they're mad about the exact same thing, but it's just the solutions that they're asking for. Maybe one side thinks that there's less government's the answers. One side thinks that more government's the answer or something. What is that overlap that you were seeing?
Yeah, so pretty much. And it also comes down to what they think the government should do. And so actually, oddly, if you get far enough left, far enough right, one of the things they have in common is they want the government to do something. But then the question is what they want the government to do. And so on one hand, you have kind of like fascism. On the other hand, you have like, say communism or hardcore socialism. And so we've actually seen periods in Italy, in Europe and Italy, for example, where some of those far left and far right movements actually kind of make a coalition, which is funny because you think they'd be total opposite, but basically they're saying, okay, we have a lot of differences, but we actually have some similarities compared to the establishment. And so you actually kind of get that. I define it as like there's four quadrants. So there's like establishment left, establishment right, populist left, populist right. And so that's kind of a simplistic way of kind of saying there's actually, in some ways, like four parties that in any given country are kind of competing with each other. And then, of course, you have different subsets of those groups.
I look at it like, it's interesting that you said like fascism and socialism are kind of on opposite ends, and sometimes they could join. And I look at them as very similar. And so you do have all these isms, right? Fascism and communism, and socialism and capitalism and whatever. And I kind of look at it just like two systems. So you have one that's like captured, controlled, centrally planned, and you have one that's like free, open, competitive. And like fascism and communism, or socialism, I look at all those as like a command economy, right? It's like a captured, like centrally planned economy. So maybe fascism and socialism are a little bit different, but they're both the same in the sense where the government, controls the means of production versus having an open competitive system.
Yeah.
So it seems like I would say like they both want the government to do something, but like some side would say, hey, we want the government to do something, which is get out of the way, right? Do less of it. And the other side is demanding more. And I guess they just they can't decide what they want more of.
Yeah, pretty much. And it's also, like the funny thing is if you look at in global politics, libertarianism is actually pretty rare. And so when you look at, say, say left-leaning politics in some areas, right-leaning politics, they often want the government to do something, but it becomes a matter of what. It's like, do they want higher taxes, lower taxes? Do they want the government to regulate your social life more or less? And so, for example, one thing I like to point out is that there's very few states that are super low tax, and they were early to legalize cannabis, for example, right? It's usually one or the other. Usually, like some of the high tax states also legalized it, whereas some of the low tax states were slow to do it. Some of them still haven't done it. And so it's actually kind of, we have 50 experiments in the United States, and in terms of they all can manage a lot of the aspects about their economies, but very few of them have chosen, say, libertarianism. And that's an example that we see kind of worldwide, where you tend to see these kind of different elements where they tend to want government involvement, but then they differ on what exactly they want. Whereas, the libertarians rarely tend to get in control and be able to kind of enact the policies that they would prefer to have actually kind of lower government.